Team Karmelo gets a win in court. They're getting a new judge. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. We're going to get you started here with a great summary from our news partners over on WFAA around the Karmelo Anthony appeal.
In just a few hours, Karmelo Anthony and his attorneys returned to court pushing for a new trial.
Anthony was convicted of murdering Austin Metcalf at a Frisco track meet last year. Our Janelle Fort is live at the Collin County Courthouse where a new judge is taking over his appeals. Good morning, Janelle.
Good morning to you, Dia and Matt. Well, there is no doubt that yesterday was a win for Karmelo Anthony's legal team, but today comes the much harder part. They now have to convince that new judge that there were problems in that first trial serious enough to throw out his conviction and do the whole thing all over again. So yesterday, a visiting judge agreed to remove Judge John Roach from the case. One of the defense's biggest arguments centered on an interview Roach did with WFAA just days after the verdict, where he said he believed the trial was fair and the jury got it right. They played that entire interview in court yesterday, and while the visiting judge said he didn't believe Roach had actually been unfair, he said those comments could make someone on the outside reasonably question whether Roach could remain impartial. That was enough for him to grant the recusal. Here's how our legal expert, Ton Shapiro, put it.
Technically, that's probably the first victory they've had in this case since it started, but it doesn't really change the landscape of what's next.
And what's next starts this morning. So retired Judge Michael Chitty has now been appointed to hear Anthony's request for a new trial. Anthony's attorneys are expected to raise several issues they say kept him from getting a fair one, including agreements over evidence that were never put on the record, restrictions on courtroom access for the public and media, Anthony's decision not to testify, and the removal of 3 black potential jurors. Now, Anthony is expected to be back here in court today. Cameras are still not allowed inside, so we will still have our team of legal experts and reporters inside so that we can get you the latest developments as they happen. I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Janelle, thank you so much.
Hang on a second. Can we just go back a little bit? What was that judge's name? Did you catch the judge's name? I think it was around this part. Just allow me to be a child.
Had in this case since it started, but it doesn't really change the landscape of what's next.
And what's next starts this morning. So retired Judge Michael Chitty has now been appointed.
Michael, what? Don't say it, Garrett. Don't say it on the air. Did you hear that guy's name? That's his real name. Did you hear that?
Starts this morning. So retired Judge Michael Chitty has now been appointed.
You can say that? Okay. I'm not going to harp on that too much. But look, let's be grown-ups for a second here. This is a win for the Karmelo Anthony team. The fact that he got a new judge means that there's going to be a new guy to come in and see this, and we don't know what's going on in Judge You-Know-What's head. We don't know if he's the number 1 judge, or maybe he could be the number 2 judge. Huh? Yeah, that was pretty bad. New evidence has actually come to light that we didn't have back in June when the trial started. And a few people are reporting on this. I'm going to read you from a friend of the show, Sarah Fields, who's done some killer reporting on this, and she attended every day of the Karmelo Anthony trial up in McKinney when it happened in June. So in this update, there are new texts from Karmelo Anthony that weren't allowed in the first case, and I think they might end up being allowed in this second case because they've come to light here. So apparently they're not off the Overton window just yet. So let me give you some of these texts from that are being reported here. Let's see. So the prosecution said a lot of people asked why Karmelo Anthony took a knife to a track meet. Those reasons were captured in our 404 motion. And Karmelo's ex-girlfriend went to the assistant principal the morning that Karmelo stabbed Austin Metcalf. She told the assistant principal that she broke up with Karmelo and he was stalking her the day of the murder. A text is then shown from Karmelo Anthony that says, "I'm low-key on the verge." That's the morning of the stabbing. "I'm low-key on the verge." If you're familiar with Gen Alpha slang, that's kind of like millennial or even Gen X slang for "I'm finna pop off." He also threatened the girl with a knife in one message, told her in another text, here, this is in quotes, "When I stab somebody, I'm going to lick their blood off the blade. Karmelo Anthony texted that to his ex-girlfriend after they had broke up and he was stalking her. When I stab somebody, I'm going to lick their blood off the blade. What does that do to the narrative that he was just a poor, helpless, defenseless kiddo who was being bullied and threatened by a bunch of evil, scary, violent, white racists? What are we talking about here? There's also warnings from people that say there's more text like this. In fact, there's multiple sources. I'm not just pulling from one here. But what do you think about that? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. When I stab somebody, I'm going to lick their blood off the blade. Not a guy who's a self-defense minded fellow. Like, boy, if push comes to shove, I really would hate to have to use this thing to defend my life. No, this is the text of a psychopath. This isn't even text of a sociopath. This is the text of a psychopath. I can't wait to use this. And then I'm going to lick the blood off the blade. You mean you're going to enjoy taking the life of another human being? Do you find that something to celebrate and brag about? But we're supposed to believe you're just some innocent guy who's being picked on and had to do it. He shoved my arm. What do you want me to do? Here's what I think would be ideal if I had my druthers. And thank goodness I'm not in charge of anything. I hope he gets a new trial, and I hope this time he gets life. That's what I hope. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, Nick's Right from the Nick's Right podcast, talking about the Karmelo Anthony trial and some other McKinney news with the recall and the Moss. McKinney, you're getting a lot of attention today. We'll continue with this next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Yeah, we got a lot of news out of McKinney for some reason. I'm James Parker. It's the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Remember the WBAP morning show when you wake up, they're on from 5 to 9. My next guest is going to help me keep track of all of this, but just in the last couple of weeks, we now have this Karmelo Anthony appeal that's going through the court system in McKinney. We have the recall petitions that most recall petitions don't have a chance. This looks like it might have a chance. We have the giant mosque that was just approved and all the protests around it to help make sense of it all, or at least try and relay some of the info. Nick from the Nick's Right podcast coming back on the James Show. Welcome back, Nick. Now, you were keeping track of the original case. Are you surprised that there's still protesters that are coming out for an appeal hearing?
Surprised? No. I think that they're trying to fight this pretty hardcore. So I wouldn't call it surprise. I'm more surprised about the evidence that just came out. So the evidence that just came out there was evidence that was basically pretty damning evidence against Anthony. And they did some kind of like gentleman's handshake deal to not present it. And now that's coming out that they're trying to get a new trial. And it's pretty damning evidence, to be honest with you.
Well, I was reading one of the texts here. He had threatened his ex-girlfriend with a knife, and then also said that when he stabs someone, when I stab somebody, I'm going to lick their blood off the blade. So this,
oh my God,
this was evidence not presented at the first trial. Do I have that correct?
That is correct. That is something that is being presented at this trial. And according to what I saw, allegedly, the reason why they didn't present it is because they had some kind of gentleman handshake deal to not present it. And now I'm wondering, like, who the heck are representing these people to do a handshake deal that would bury some of the best evidence that is going to shine the most light on this complete subject? I mean, seriously?
Okay, well, this doesn't make him seem like a sympathetic figure here.
No.
Look, here's what I'm hoping. I hope he gets a new trial. I hope all the evidence comes out, and I hope he gets life. I hope it turns out worse for him.
Yeah. I think this is probably going to be him trying to get a new trial, and then the new evidence coming out is going to backfire in his face. Like, he's actually probably going to go to jail for life now instead of what he had before. So I think he just shot himself in the foot. Nice.
All right, we're talking with Nick from the Nick's Right podcast, one of the Nicks from the Nick's Right podcast. And another big story coming out of McKinney. The big mosque got approved, and now the recalls are kind of in response to the mosque. Do you think that they have a chance? Because most recalls are just a futile effort that really gets people exercised for nothing. But some people seem to be a little more optimistic about this one, Nick.
Yeah, this recall probably has a lot more legs than we thought. I mean, the one who's heading it up, her name is Ashley Marie. She actually got reposted by Rob Schneider on X a few times in support of this specific recall. And the amount of signatures she's getting, they're hitting their goals every day. And they only need, like, I want to say like 5,600 signatures. And so it's not that big of a number out of 200,000 people. So it's very well possible that this is going to actually happen. And so, but we don't need to lose the momentum. People need to continue to sign that petition. That way we can actually get this recall in place.
Another thing I saw that would probably be a hot, heavy conversation on the Nick's Right podcast is there's a new decree by the city of McKinney honoring the month of Ramadan.
Yeah. Actually, I need to do some correction on that. That came to light about 3 or 4 months ago via Amy Mack and the Rare Foundation. But someone just recently sent that to me saying, "Hey, do you remember this?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to get that out there." And
I didn't remember that.
Pop off again.
Yeah,
I didn't remember it either, but someone sent it to me, and then Amy Mack came and said, "Hey, we reported on this a while ago." So this was actually way before they approved the mosque. And so, like, this happened 3 or 4 months ago, and then they approved the mosque. So you can see the timeline of, like, okay, something's going on here in McKinney, and something needs to happen, which is why these recalls are so important.
Man, I've been trying to get Amy Mack on the show. Can you hook me up with her?
I will do my best. I don't think I'm one of her favorite people, but because she won't answer my DMs.
She didn't answer mine either. I don't know. Maybe she's heard my show and doesn't like me. I have to make all kinds of assumptions here, but she's doing some great work online.
She is doing some amazing work. Yeah, I'll never say anything bad about her, and I've been trying to get a hold of her as well. We wouldn't want to get her on the podcast to talk about it, just to get more light on the subject. You know what I mean?
Well, I got to watch it because I remember I was hounding someone to come on the show for a long time. And they're like, I can't do it. I'm deaf. You stop asking me to be on your radio show. I was like, oh, now I feel like a bad person. That was a while back, but
I'm deaf.
Yeah, it's embarrassing when that happens. All right, Nick's right. What's coming up on your latest podcast?
We just interviewed Ashley Marie. She's the one that's heading it up. So that's going to be releasing on Monday at 7 a.m. But we also started a new live. By the way, you're live with us right now on Rumble. And so we started a new live show that starts at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Well, don't listen to that. Just watch it after the fact because the James Show's on. Get off my show. That's Nick's Right from the Nick's Right podcast. He's a great follow on X. So go check him out there at Nick's Right Pod. Coming up next, you're going to have to hear what James Tallarico said about the Karmelo Anthony trial. Let's go to Darren in Saginaw. You're on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
Hey, James, just to kind of piggyback off of what you and Nick were saying, I think he is going to wind up, figuratively speaking, shooting himself in the foot with that new trial.
Wouldn't it be like stabbing himself in the foot?
Yeah.
Would be better, huh?
But I can't remember if they introduced the body cam footage in the original trial or if they plan on doing it this time. Because if you remember, he actually, after they Mirandized him, he actually confessed to the stabbing to the police on body cam.
Yeah, I don't know how convincing of or compelling of evidence that'll be because the question isn't whether or not he stabbed him. Admitting he stabbed him doesn't do anything to mollify, help, or hurt the self-defense argument.
Right.
I mean, what the hell do I know? I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, neither am I. But I just thought it was kind of interesting, with them trying to do this. I'm like, dude, you've already been found guilty once. Why go back and try to fight it again with everything that's going to come back and get you again?
Well, I mean, God, that'd be so sweet if it did. Because really, Darren, they say he got 35 years. He is going to be eligible for parole after half of that. So 17 and a half years. And seeing as how he's only like, what was he, like 19 now, I think, maybe? So he could get out of jail when he's 35 or 36. You might just want to, shut up and stick with it. But I don't know. I guess they think they got a case. But really, Darren, here's the dangerous part. You get one of these people that you see in the comment section that are saying he's innocent or he didn't do nothing or it was self-defense or white people are evil. You get one of those on the jury, he will walk.
Yeah. And that's sad to think, but it's actually true. Now, if you want to spin it the other way, what had it been roles reversed? What kind of damage the city would have gone through?
Oh, you talking about there'd be riots?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, we know, Darren. That's a good call. Actually, we all probably should remind ourselves of that. Remind us, hey, at least we're on the civilized team. At least when we get upset, things don't catch fire. Coming up next, James Tallarico was asked about the Karmelo Anthony case on The Breakfast Club and his response. You'll hear it next on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Well, we got some new evidence in the Karmelo Anthony case. I'm James Parker. It's the James Show, News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. You may be thinking, well, what do we need new evidence for? He's already gone to court. He's already been found guilty. Well, he's asking for a new trial. They've gotten a new judge, so he might get a new trial. But some things we're already learning from this new hearing that's happening the last couple days in McKinney. In fact, I have some friends of the show that are sitting in the courtroom right now. You'll probably get an update from Sippy Cup tomorrow or Monday. But for the people who just joined us, let's get you all caught up because this is a fantastic summary from our news partners over at WFAA.
In just a few hours, Karmelo Anthony and his attorneys returned to court pushing for a new trial.
Anthony was convicted of murdering Austin Metcalf at a Frisco track meet last year. Our Janelle Fort is live at the Collin County Courthouse where a new judge is taking over his appeals. Good morning, Janelle.
Good morning to you, Dia and Matt. Well, there is no doubt that yesterday was a win for Karmelo Anthony's legal team, but today comes the much harder part. They now have to convince that new judge that there were problems in that first trial serious enough to throw out his conviction and do the whole thing all over again. So yesterday, a visiting judge agreed to remove Judge John Roach from the case. One of the defense's biggest arguments centered on an interview Roach did with WFAA just days after the verdict, where he said he believed the trial was fair and the jury got it right. They played that entire interview in court yesterday, and while the visiting judge said he didn't believe Roach had actually been unfair, he said those comments could make someone on the outside reasonably question whether Roach could remain impartial. That was enough for him to grant the recusal. Here's how our legal expert, Ton Shapiro, put it.
Technically, that's probably the first victory they've had in this case since it started, but it doesn't really change the landscape of what's next.
And what's next starts this morning. So retired Judge Michael Chitty has now been appointed to hear Anthony's request for a new trial. Anthony's attorneys are expected to raise several issues they say kept him from getting a fair one, including agreements over evidence that were never put on the record, restrictions on courtroom access for the public and media, Anthony's decision not to testify, and the removal of 3 black potential jurors. Now, Anthony is expected to be back here in court today. Cameras are still not allowed inside, so we will still have our team of legal experts and reporters inside so that we can get you the latest developments as they happen. I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, so there you go. And again, I was trying to keep up with this. What was that new judge's name?
What's next starts this morning. So retired Judge Michael Chitty has now been appointed.
Oh, that's right. I wonder if he's any good, or I wonder if he stinks. Yeah, solid one in there. Okay, so now let's move over to the next great piece of analysis you need to hear on this case. The guy who's asking to be the next senator from the great state of Texas. His name is James Tallarico. He's running against Ken Paxton. We're all going to go vote for or against this guy coming up in November. And he's on the Breakfast Club. Now, he's on the Breakfast Club again. I think this is the second time he's been on the Breakfast Club. He's really trying to shore up his support with black voters because it's not going so well for 2 reasons. One reason is they absolutely screwed Jasmine Crockett out of that primary seat. She was the one that was winning, and then the establishment, the money, the donors, the media, they all got in behind this guy. I don't know why. I think she was a better candidate anyway. And also because guys who are of that persuasion, or at least perceived to be of that persuasion, they're not real big on the rainbow people. Okay, let me just put it like that. And so he's got to go fix that because this is where he's lagging, and he can't win without the black vote. So check him out on the Breakfast Club playing the card in the Karmelo Anthony trial.
Texas, we see what happened with Karmelo Anthony, and you said it was a tragedy.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, I've done a lot of work in the State House on justice reform, and right now we've got a system that doesn't serve all Americans equally, and we know that black Texans have been have not gotten the justice they deserve.
Really?
In many cases. And you know, I'm not an expert on this particular case, but I know that there were no black members of the jury. And to me, that's the only evidence you need to really prove that this system is not working for black Texans.
What is with this presenting of the case that they make it sound like the black guy got stabbed by the white guy? It's like, well, see if we can get him justice. Get him justice. His justice would be go to jail, be put in a box for the rest of his life. Are you under the impression he didn't kill him, James Tallarico? Are you under the impression that it was really self-defense? Oh, it's not fair because he didn't have a black person on the jury. So you're looking at the jury and you're judging that. You're making a blanket judgment on the jury with no other information based solely on the color of their skin that renders them unfit to be on the jury and make a judgment on this case. That is actual racism. Whenever you're judging people based solely on the color of their skin and you're making a judgment value about them, not whether or not they'll need sunscreen, but whether or not their opinion should be valued in a jury box. Well, I'm sorry, white people's opinion isn't as valuable to you as someone else that's darker based solely on the color of their skin. He doesn't believe that. This is pandering. This is gross pandering. And I think black people were smart enough to see through that. Because I think most black people that have contacted the James Show are actually against Karmelo. They actually think this was murder. There's a difference on whether or not it might have been negligent manslaughter or murder, but everyone thinks he's guilty of a violent crime and should be locked in a box for a long time. Not everyone, but I don't know. Do you think that'll work for him? Do you think that just kind of naked pandering will? It'll work for some people for sure. The Dominic Alexanders of the world will probably lap that right up. But will the Jasmine Crockett's of the world? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, some more sound bites from the political front on this. The Karmelo Anthony trial really isn't about violence anymore. It's about politics. And we'll keep going down that little rabbit hole next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Let me share you some feedback I'm already getting on the Karmelo Anthony updates here. If you're just joining us, he's asking for a new judge to hear his appeal, and he got it. So that sounds like something that, Team Karmelo hasn't got a whole lot of wins in this one. This sounds like a win. Well, God taketh, God giveth away. There's also some new information that came out that I just learned that you probably hadn't heard either about Karmelo Anthony. Some of the texts leading up to the day of the event show a violent nature. Talked about stabbing someone, stalking his girlfriend. The day of the stabbing, his ex-girlfriend contacted the assistant principal asking for help because Karmelo was stalking her and she was scared of him. But one of the killer quotes here, the day of, he said, "I'm low-key on the verge." And then he also threatened his ex-girlfriend with a knife in one message. And then in another message says, "When I stab somebody, I'm going to lick their blood off the blade." I heard on Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins that his parents had become so concerned about his violent nature and how much he was getting in trouble. He was entered into a program when he was still living in Louisiana, sponsored by LSU for violent kids. Now, I've got an email here. This is from John. Tell me where you're from, by the way, when you send an email, so I can say John from wherever, because I don't want to say your last name. But John is echoed by about 4 other people. He says, in a perfect world, you get a new trial, a black judge, and an all-black jury, a new conviction, and a life sentence. That would be just the ideal scenario. Are we going to get that? Oh, hell no, we're not going to get that. But a lot of people are also echoing that, wow, I hope this guy does get a new trial. He goes back, they get this new info in there, and he gets a worse sentence. Man, wouldn't that be nice? You really think it's going to happen like that? Yeah, I kind of hope so, but don't get your hopes up. Also have other people saying just the new stuff that's coming out. People are throwing it out on social media, and people are passing it along to me. But there's also rumors here that one of the reasons why his parents moved him, or his mom and stepdad moved him from where they were in Louisiana to Frisco, is maybe if we can start over and get him out of this bad crowd, that he'll stop getting in trouble. He was violent over there. He had an issue being a violent. Look, if you're a psychopath, you can't really hide it for very long. It has to come out. That's part of being sociopaths can hide it. Sociopaths can get away with it for their whole life, and really the only person that ever knows is the person they married, poor bastard. But this is a psychopath. He's not indifferent to the suffering of his fellow human beings. He doesn't have like a connection. He enjoys the suffering of his fellow human beings. He gets off on it. It gives him a sense of purpose and power to inflict pain on his fellow human beings. And once you know this guy is a psychopath, then you put him under that tent, and then you hear what the witnesses all say around him. It's crystal clear what happened under that tent. This wasn't a scared little boy that was being picked on and bullied and felt threatened for his life. He went with a knife, just couldn't wait to stab someone, and was waiting for the slightest of provocation. And when that slightest of provocation didn't come, he went and sat under someone else's tent for a long time with them for 5 minutes, asking them, "Can you please leave? Can you please leave? Come on, don't let me go get a security guard. You ain't going to do nothing. Touch me, find out. Touch me, see what happens." And then with just the touch, with just the shove of his left arm, he murders a kid. This is a psychopath. I think it's an injustice that this guy might get out in 15 years or 17 and a half years. But you know what? Part of me thinks, keep showing this trial. Keep showing more and more and more evidence of what a sick psychopath. Licking the blood off a blade of a knife after you murder someone. You're not like upset about it. You're not traumatized by it. It's not the lesser of two evils. It's something you relish, enjoy, celebrate, brag about. This kid's a psycho. Stephen A. Smith said it perfect a couple months ago.
Karmelo Anthony murdered Austin Metcalf. There is no other way to slice it. How else Do you explain, or can you explain you at a track meet appearing in a visitor's tent, Austin Metcalf and his brother, according to reports, come over to you asking you to leave because you're sitting under their tent? An argument ensues. Folks have said it spanned more than 5-6 minutes. Others said it went as long as 15. A two-hand shove is believed to have happened by one witness. Another witness said it was a one-hand shove. How does that justify Karmelo Anthony pulling out a knife and stabbing Austin Metcalf to death? How? That's not justification.
That's murder. Now that you know the new evidence, now that you know he was dying, he's on the verge, he couldn't wait to stab one. He was premeditating the stabbing of a fellow human being and then said if he stabs someone, he's going to lick the blood off the blade. Now that you know all this, let's go back to James Tellerico. I just want you to hear this one more time before we do the news.
Of Texas, we see what happened with Karmelo Anthony, and you said it was a tragedy.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, I've done a lot of work in the State House on justice reform, and right now we've got a system that doesn't serve all Americans equally, and we know that Black Texans have been have not gotten the justice they deserve in many cases. And you know, I'm not an expert on this particular case, but I know that there were no Black members of the jury, and to me, that's the only evidence you need to really prove that this system is not working for Black Texans.
Well, that is just a trash take. You don't like the trial, and you didn't bring up one piece of evidence or one piece of whether or not he was guilty. Your sole criticism of that was the color of the people in the jury box. Wow. All right. Tim McGraw is coming to town September 11th. He's going to be at the Dos Equis Pavilion on his Pawn Shop Guitar Tour 2026. You can get tickets and information at livenation.com. Or if you want to try and win a pair of tickets from us, listen to the WBAP Morning Show this week to find out maybe you can win a pair of tickets from us. Coming up next on The James Show, we're going to check in with Mom Donnie's government grocery stores because, of course, they're already failing. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. How many problems could we avoid if we just admitted capitalism's better than socialism and we stuck with it? I'm James Parker. It's the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. You know, I think it's a damn shame that a guy can go win the mayorship of the biggest city in the greatest country the world's ever known, New York City, and then go out and say something that's just economically flat earth. It is to go out and say, well, socialism, we've just got to try, and not be laughed out of the room, and not have people in the media go, you know how many cities have tried this? You know how many countries have tried this? You know how many times this has been tried and it's failed every time? What the hell are you doing? This is a dumb idea. You shouldn't do it. Why don't the citizens erupt? Well, hell, half of them can't read. The other half went through school and all they learned is they don't know who can have babies anymore. And so now we're just forced in this negative feedback loop of failed economic programs that sound nice. So if you're just joining us, I could run you through the warped timeline that we're in real quick. Mom Donnie this summer, we're going to have government grocery stores in New York.
Since 2019, food prices have soared at grocery stores around the country by roughly 30%, in fact. Talk to shoppers around the city, and you'll often hear the same frustration. Wages have not kept up, which is why city government is stepping in to make people's lives more affordable. Today, I am proud to announce a collection of essential staples that will be predictably 30% cheaper at all 5 of our city-run grocery stores.
Now, how do you make them 30% cheaper? Well, the government store will sell them for 30% cheaper, and they'll make up the cost that they're losing from the wholesale price through tax dollars. So you're paying for your groceries and you're getting a deal, but the deal is still being paid by you through your taxes. So that's a weird way to, air quotes, save money, but the same obvious things that have come up everywhere this is tried. We tried a partnership here in Dallas. They tried straight up government grocery stores. I saw it in Waco. There was one we talked about in Kansas City that was a failure. They did something similar in New Orleans. And this is a regular idea that keeps getting tried over and over and keeps failing. But the same questions come up. So here is Mom Donnie being asked in August, what about are you going to have to ration this stuff? If you can sell milk 30% cheaper than everywhere else, why wouldn't the grocer 10 miles away come in, buy all your milk, take it to his store, and sell it at a markup? So, of course, there's going to have to be rationing here.
How are you going to keep people from taking advantage of that, that deal, basically? And is there going to be a limit on the number of items that someone can take that are discounted at that level from that essential basket?
So our RFP makes very clear that this is a program for New Yorkers to be able to put food on the table, not a program for people to be able to make a quick buck through reselling. I'm going to pass it over to our EDC head, G-Pack, to add some additional details.
Yeah, you better pass it over. She basically says we're going to have to ration it. So now you still have to pay for 70% of your groceries. The other 30% is going to be paid by your taxes. And there's going to be people who are grifting the system, which is probably going to drive up costs a little bit more. In order to mitigate the grift, you're going to have some auditors and some inspectors and some sort of oversight. So now there's going to be bureaucrats on the system and you have to pay their salary with your tax dollars too. Is this really making your groceries cheaper? And so now the question that came up this week, fantastic to ask. Finally, someone's bringing in some quite obvious stuff that you and I thought of the first day. And I didn't catch this lady's name. It's the hairless lady. I heard they were making fun of her on Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. She looks like Sinead O'Connor in 1994. It has nothing to do with what's coming out of her mouth. If I agreed with it, I would still make fun of her hair. So let's not do that. But she is yes, Sinead O'Connor, great singer. Thank you, Garrett. This is your input. So the New York City grocery store boss under Mom Donnie is now faced with the question coming from the media that are saying, hey, you have some other grocers that are somewhat in the area that are complaining that you're going to be stealing business from them because people that used to go to them and buy milk and eggs and bread at normal price are now going to buy that at the government grocery store for 30% cheaper. They can't compete with that. They're going to lose money. What are you going to do about that? Well, we'll just give them some tax money.
I think ultimately the goals of these locations, not just here in East Harlem, but any borough location, is to be complementary to the neighborhood, and really, rising tides, right? We can all cooperate and work together in a meaningful way.
Do you mind, what is I've heard that term from EDC officials, that these are meant to be complementary. What does that mean? What does that complementary mean in terms of policy, operations, and things like that?
Yeah, I think we're, as an agency looking at a number of different complementary, policies and programs, grants, incentives that can come alongside these grocery stores to support other, local independent businesses that are in the neighborhoods. We're going to continue to listen, and we're going to continue to engage, and I'll be, alongside the operator as our partner. And like I said, making sure that we are complementary to the other businesses that are here in the neighborhood.
So other locations, other grocery stores can get grants from the city under this?
Something on the table. We're exploring a lot of different options and opportunities. I think there's a whole host of levers that the EDC is able to work within to make sure that everyone has equitable and equal access to opportunities.
This is like listening to the WNBA debate where you're sitting here saying, no, capitalism is more efficient than socialism, and they're like, no, you're wrong, and here's why, and here's what and here's how we're going to program around it. You can't program around it. It's like listening to the WNBA. Yeah, there's no difference between women and men. Oh, really? Well, line them up. Well, no, here's why you're wrong, Parker. Oh, okay. I mean, you can tell me that gravity pushes everything up, but you're wrong. And so this is amazing. Have you counted all the extra spending here? So the city of New York, in order to lower the prices and the burden of groceries on its citizens, is going to spend $70 million to open 5 locations. We're already $70 million in the hole before we've moved a gallon of milk. They're going to subsidize selling staples at a 30% loss. They are planning on losing money on everything they sell, and they're going to plug the hole with their citizens' taxpayer money after they've already used $70 million to open the stores. Then they're going to take more money from their taxpayers and have some oversight on this for the rationing and make sure no one's cheating the system. Then they're going to have another giveaway of taxpayer money to subsidize the grocery stores that are going to claim there's a negative impact. And then you're going to have another bureaucracy to run these programs, to do oversight on the programs, to do oversight on the oversight of the program, then to audit the programs. And then you're going to have a bunch of foreigners and Somalis come in. They're going to open a bunch of leering centers, or, breading centers or milking centers or whatever, state grocery centers. And there's going to be just billions of dollars that's given away because the accountability is just not going to be there like it is in every other government program. And you mean to tell me this is a more efficient way to get your average citizen a piece of bread? Stop it. This is so dumb. I mean, let them do it so we can make fun of it for purposes of the James Show. But coming up next, there's a great lecture from a college professor where he was talking about a similar string of program on top of program on top of a program that failed during the Great Depression. His name's Burton Folsom. He's a professor from Hillsdale. And you're going to hear a 2-minute clip from one of his seminars, from one of his little symposiums about this exact subject. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker on Newstalk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. All right, we're going to do a quick economics lesson here. I'm James Parker. It's the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Because we're talking about grocery stores, but it's a great analog. It's a great mirror image to so many of these other issues that turn out to be, they sound like there's some sort of empathy or compassion or social issue, and it's really just an economics issue. We all would like to minimize the amount of people who are suffering from hunger. We just differ in the way to go about it. We don't oppose government programs because we want poor people to suffer. We oppose government programs because they've been improved to be less effective at minimizing suffering than the private sector alternatives. And this has happened over and over and over. But also there is a weird spiral up that happens with government programs because government programs, especially through the eyes of the voter, shamefully, this is one of the shortcomings of democracy, capital D, is that they only think about the intentions. They only think about the title. They only think about the goal. They don't think about the unintended consequences. And when the unintended consequences show up, the tendency isn't to, let's just repeal this. That was a mistake. The tendency is to try and deal with the unintended consequences with another government program that's going to create another set of unintended consequences. And it just keeps going, and government just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And another layer of bureaucracy, another layer of rules, another layer of air quote oversight. And we should have learned this for good during the Great Depression. Now, I love talking about the economics of the Great Depression because they have the excuse that we don't have now. They just didn't know any better. America had been a free market capitalist, very classical liberal governance up until that point. I mean, classical liberal is what now we call libertarian, but I don't want to taint the argument. Now, once we went through the Great Depression and we saw all of the reactions and the failed Keynesian economics and socialism that tried to chase this problem down, now we don't have the excuse. We should know better. We're just ignorant at this point. And I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean economically, the American people are ignorant. Because if we knew all this, we wouldn't even try the government grocery stores. But here he is. Burton Folsom was talking about how in the Great Depression, there's the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. And so there was a trade war that happened and the price of our crops dropped through the floor. So the government had an idea. FDR said, well, why don't we pay some of the farmers to not produce? Yeah, if you've got 160 acres, why don't you just produce on 120 of them and we'll pay you for the 40 acres that you let lay fallow. And then here's what happened.
Well, the government discovered something when we paid people not to produce. We told everyone, okay, I want to be paid. I'm not going to produce on 40 acres. Okay. And we were getting ready and sending the checks out. And we discovered, the Department of Agriculture discovered something so unpleasant that they just hated almost to admit it publicly. It's just hard to believe. I know some of you will be astonished. Some of the farmers were paid not to produce, and then when no one was looking, they produced on that land anyway. And then they were going to sell the results. And we've got a response for that one. Don't you pull that one. We sent inspectors around. Tens of thousands of inspectors onto everybody's land, and they had measuring equipment. And they were going to measure every inch of that land to make sure that they were not producing. And if they were, they had to dig it all up. Okay, that fixes that. Whew. They could go back to the Department of Agriculture of patting themselves on the back. Except they found something else unpleasant that developed. If it's too painful, feel free to put your fingers in your ears. It's just your view of human nature is going to be shattered. Some of the farmers who are being paid not to produce offered bribes to the inspectors. We'll take some of the government money we're getting and we'll pay it to you if you'll go away. We had an answer, kind of the initial, and then we're going to send inspectors to inspect the inspectors. So we have tens of thousands of inspectors inspecting the other inspectors to see what kind of job they were doing. Well, then we found out that even the inspectors who were inspecting the inspectors were getting bribed, but we had an answer to that. We got a fleet of airplanes and we ran around and we took pictures of their land to see what they were producing, and then we would know whether they were complying with the rules or not. Does anybody see why the Department of Agriculture was the biggest federal department, except for the Department of Defense, when the Pentagon got built? It's the biggest department that we have in the federal government. Over 100,000 inspectors going around all of these airplanes and the aerial photographs. It was a program and plus we were paying people not to produce. Well, I guess some of you know what happened then. You're paying people not to produce cotton. You're paying people not to produce corn. You're paying people not to produce wheat. Well, in 1935, we had shortages of those crops, in some cases because of drought. And so what we have is we're now going to import corn, 35 million bushels of corn, 13 million bushels of wheat, and over 30 million bushels of cotton, or bales of cotton, in order to offset the amounts that we were not producing. We're paying cotton farmers not to produce cotton, and we're importing cotton. We're paying farmers not to produce corn, and we're importing corn. So now we're paying on imports for the farm products that we're not producing because we're paying the farmers not to produce, and we have an army of bureaucrats around who are also paying to make sure they don't produce.
So that was Burton Folsom from Hillsdale College. This is the same thing that's happened. It'll happen with Mom Donnie's grocery stores. It's the same thing that happens with public schools. It's the same thing that happens with public health care. I mean, do you realize how many programs that we have for health care through the government? Because right now, about 10 years ago, we passed the point of 50-50. More than 51% of all spending on health care comes from a government program. And if you have any complaints about our healthcare system, whether there's too long of a wait or too much of a cost or too much bureaucracy or paperwork, I submit that it would be better if we repealed all the socialism that has made it so funky in the first place. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next on The James Show, here in town, we are having some more questions about what the heck is going on with City Hall and everything around that. And I'll get you caught up, but it's going to be ugly. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker, and we talk about Mondani's grocery stores, not only so we don't do the dumb grocery store thing here, but I just want to cement in people's heads that we all say capitalism is better than socialism. We all agree capitalism is better than socialism. If I took a poll of people that are listening to the show right now, I imagine 90+% of them, if I gave them the question, is capitalism better than socialism? We would all say yes. Well, why do we tolerate socialism when it comes to our children and their education? If we're admitting that the Mondani grocery store is inherently flawed and failed precisely because it is divorced from free market economics, why would education be any different? Why would healthcare be any different? Why would saving for retirement be any different? So, look, we're all having a good time laughing at Mondani's grocery stores, laughing about how there is an economic flat earth line of thinking to possibly think that the government could do something more efficiently or cheaper than the private sector, yet here we are tolerating it all day, every day. In fact, we get hundreds of dollars taken from our paychecks every month to fund the taxes that pays for this failure. Y'all ready to get rid of some of this other socialism too? Frank in Rockwall, you're on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
Yes, I'm just wondering about two things with the government-run grocery stores.
Okay.
Who is going to respond to burglaries or holdups at the grocery stores? And will the grocery store workers be unionized?
Yeah, I think the grocery store workers are unionized anyway, whether they work for the government or not. But absolutely, they'll be unionized because they'll be public employees. So yeah, they'll be under whatever civil service thing. And I imagine the cops will investigate any crimes or robberies. Well, where'd that question come from?
There won't be any cops to do it.
Oh yeah, because they want to defund the police. Well, they haven't done that yet. So I think pragmatically speaking, there will still be cops to investigate theft. But yeah, no, you're bringing up, if they had their druthers and all the police were gone, then yeah, you could just rob the place blind and go on about your business. Because hey, you never know. Someone might have pushed their arm or something. But Frank, so you're against the government-run grocery stores?
Oh, yes.
And you agree that capitalism is better than socialism?
Much better.
Would you agree with me that we need to get rid of public schools?
We need to gradually move away from public schools and go back to a private model. I agree with that. Texas is starting to do that, and so are we around the United States. And we also need to see and have some public information about the return on investment, on how much money they're spending and what the results are. We need to talk about the results, that the kids are not graduating and we spent this much on them.
Right, and that's one of the headlines. And thank you very much for your call, Frank and Rockwall. You're a beautiful transition to my next topic, because there's an investigation that's announced, and Ken Paxton's office is supposed to, or Greg Abbott appointed some guy that's supposed to be auditing the budgets of some of these school systems and seeing how much actually goes to the classroom. And the thought process behind that is just locked tight. The questions come up because in some of these school districts, the population hasn't really gone up, of students hasn't really gone up, but the funding has. And so where's that money going? Is that money actually going to the students, or are we just creating new administrative posts and it's really just a jobs program for leftist advocates? Well, we're about to find out.
The Texas Comptroller is launching a review of up to 4 school districts' finances to make sure they're spending taxpayer money responsibly. It comes at the request of Governor Abbott. Now, the Comptroller's office says the districts selected for review will vary in size and location, and those led by state-appointed boards are exempt. The selected district will be named in the coming weeks, a final report, though, due by the end of the year. So the legislature can consider the findings when session does begin in January.
So it's not as stark of a contrast in the state of Texas as it is in like our neighbors, because I lived in Louisiana for a while, and I was a talk radio guy on a station just like this. And in Texas, our population has gone up a lot over the last generation. Our student population has gone up a lot over the last generation, significantly. So, if we're spending more and it's more per student or whatever, there's kind of some questions and extra variables. But in Louisiana, the population has been stagnant. The population of students in the LSU system in all their colleges has been about the same over the last 25 years. But spending, the budgets have more than doubled. And even when you account for inflation, they've more than doubled. So the question becomes, well, did they get a whole lot of new students? No. Did they double up the teachers? And so now the class sizes are half of what they were? No, class sizes are about the same. For every extra dollar, every extra salary they put on, it was just an administrator. The size of their administration had more than doubled in the last 25 years. And so you can't tell me that spending actually helps. You can't tell me that that's actually useful and needed. If the college system was working just fine with half the administration it had, same number of students 25 years ago, clearly those guys are unneeded. Well, what are we spending that money? What are we getting in return for that? Here's the answer. The soft answer is nothing. The real answer is you are hiring a bunch of Democrat political activists in giant six-figure salary jobs where they're going to have a ton of free time. They're going to be off on the holidays. They're going to be off on Christmas time. They're going to be off all summer. They're going to have plenty of time to use their disposable income and their organizing and their credentials to rally against you politically, to donate to their candidates, to be part of organizations, to knock on doors, to do phone calls, to champion causes, to go protest, to go to meetings, to go advocate for their political causes, because now their entire livelihood is in bed with big government. So now you're just creating hundreds of thousands of big government activists, all making six figures and all dependent on the system. Coming up next on The James Show, Governor Abbott wants to ban public schools from using H-1B visas. Dude, why are we doing that for 5 seconds? Why are we doing that yesterday? Why haven't you changed that the entire time you've been in office, sir? We'll address that next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. What on earth are we doing using the H-1B visa system for public school jobs? I'm James Parker. It's The James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. This is filed under a whole series of stories that happens on The James Show called Why Weren't We Doing This Yesterday? WFAA has your report from the latest from Governor Greg Abbott.
Meanwhile, Governor Abbott wants to ban Texas public schools from using H-1B visas to hire foreign teachers, a move that crippled districts like Dallas ISD, which do rely on those visas to fill hard-to-staff positions. Last year, Dallas ISD had more H-1B educators approved than any other district in Texas, specifically recruiting bilingual and special education teachers. Public school districts in Texas do employ more educators on H-1B visas than any other state, according to the National Education Association. The president of Texas American Federation of Teachers tells us H-1B visas do help fill critical teacher shortages.
I think it could be potentially catastrophic. The programs, the policies that he's putting forth seem very, don't seem very strategic. They seem very much from the hip. They seem very much based on culture wars as opposed to actually congruent policy that could actually improve public education in our schools.
The proposal would need legislative approval to actually become law. In a statement, Dallas ISD tells WFAA the district only hires teachers from abroad to fill critical shortages identified by the Texas Education Agency. And each of those teachers is certified by the TEA as well. If the governor's new expectation is to eliminate these teachers, then we're going to need more Texans in the teaching pipeline.
Okay, so I think the Dallas ISD is lying through their teeth right there in that last statement. We only hire teachers from abroad to fill critical shortages identified by the Texas Education Agency. We know that's a lie. Texas Scorecard was looking into this earlier this year, and they were showing how DISD was using this to hire teachers' aides, to hire janitors, to hire regular support staff. You don't tell me that we have a critical shortage of teachers' aides. What we really have, here's the truth. They don't only hire teachers from abroad to fill critical shortages. They hire teachers from abroad so they don't have to offer native teachers a higher salary. Because without this labor pool, how would they fill those shortages? If we didn't have the H-1B program, if they couldn't just go take cheap people from the third world, how would they get more teachers to fill those spots? They would what? Raise salaries. Wow. And so for all you people who say you care so much about teachers and especially public teachers, why would you support this program that suppresses wages? Why would you support this program that prevents wages from being higher than they otherwise would? And not only is the wage not higher than it otherwise would, there's someone's daughter or son who would have that job, but they're actually not going to get a higher salary. They're going to get $0 because we're going to import someone from the third world who's willing to do the same job for $48,000 a year. This is bad for teachers. This is bad for Texans. This is bad for our economy. This is bad except for everyone in the administration who, if they save money and pay teachers as little as possible, there'll be more money for them to divvy up. This is only good for the higher-ups in the administrations in the public school system. This is worse than the profit motive. This is worse than the profit incentive. You can't tell me, look, and I'm not promising nirvana. I'm not promising if we get rid of public schools that there won't be anything to gripe about with the private school system. But it'll be better than this. There's no excuse to be hiring public school teachers from overseas. The only reason they're doing this is so they can pay you less. In fact, you're going to lose your job. But for all you teachers out there, especially the ones who have heard me talk about other education issues, it's like, you just hate teachers. No, policies like this prove that I care for teachers. And, well, not all teachers. I don't care for teachers that are from anywhere outside of America. If you're a teacher from a third world country, sorry, you're going to miss this opportunity. But when people say teachers should be paid more, or teachers don't get their fair share, or teachers don't get a fair shake, well, you better be opposing this. And what really chaps me about this is how is this already approved? We've had Republican control of this state for 30 years, and we're hiring H-1B visas to kick your daughters and sons out of their jobs and be replaced at a lower salary? Because here's all the questions that you should be asking. Does this help us get better scores in Texas schools? No, it couldn't possibly be that some guy coming over here whose English is his second language and he has no experience in the American system whatsoever could be better than the average teacher who's leaving these jobs. So does it get better results? No. Does it, when I say is it cheaper, not is it cheaper to hire the teachers, do your property taxes go down? Does the amount of spending, is there any cuts to the budget? No, the money they saved is just going to go to some bloated bureaucrat up the faculty line, an administrator who has no bearing on whether or not your kids can do fractions by the time they get to Berkeley Engineering School. All right, here's Isaac in Burleson. You're on News Talk 820, 933 FM, WBAP. What do I have wrong today?
What do you have right today? First of all, we have just hit the 40 trillion mark, and the guys you constantly protect on this radio station account for nearly 1/4 of that overall deficit. And then we look at the educational system. How does you and your plan work as far as privatizing education when you have a lot of people who are low income? How they get a quality education?
Well, are they getting a quality education now, or is a big chunk of them graduating illiterate and unable to read at a 12th grade level?
At least they have a shot at getting one. Now, whether they had a self-determination to get that.
Don't give me intentions. Give me the results.
Yeah, that's a vast majority of people who are not being successful. But you talking about socialism.
Yes.
And as far as public education, so do we need to disband our fire departments and our police departments as well?
Well, no, actually, policemen have the function that is acceptable in the Constitution. It's not socialism to have police, law enforcement, courts, the enforcement of your private property rights. Yeah, that's well within the purview of the government. And so I would be against policemen. Fire department's a little iffy. I could make a good case for private sector fire departments, although if it's on a small enough local level, like on a municipal level, that's not really as socialist. It's not like we have a national fireman program, not like we have a national fireman department. It's not like our police, because like in Mexico, they really are, their police are far more socialized than ours are. Because when you walk out of the resort in Cancun, there's a guy there with an AR. It's a federale. He's a federal cop, but they're enforcing the local laws. And so we sort of have a division of power with our cops that make it less socialist. So, like cops aren't really beat cops. Oh, I'm a little over time. So beat cops aren't really enforcing immigration law, as you see. And federal cops aren't really enforcing speeding tickets. So at least there's a division of power in there. But no, generally speaking, capitalism is better than socialism, especially in schools, especially in healthcare, especially in anything that's economic and not spelled out as part of the government's job in the Constitution. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. We're going to talk about flock cameras and cameras in the classroom next on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. So when it comes to flock cameras, is the crime fighting a worthy trade-off for surveillance? I'm James Parker, News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Welcome to the big show. And I love this conversation that we're having on flock cameras because, number one, it's intelligent conversation, a worthy conversation to have, because as technology evolves, as the human condition and our abilities evolve, well, the Constitution was written in such a way to evolve with it. And so where do we learn about the new boundaries? Because the privacy concerns are real. The crime fighting powers are real. So how do we balance this out? Now, it's the classic, it seems to be along the classic debates of trading a little bit of freedom for the promise of safety. And in the end, what do you get in either one? But in this one, are you really trading any of your privacy here? Because the Supreme Court, I think the founding fathers would all agree, you have no right to privacy when you're out in public. And so the other part of the flock cameras isn't just that there's cameras monitoring you. It's now that they're attached to AI. They can log what they see. And that includes license plates. That includes facial recognition. So now the government can set up these cameras all over, wherever, and usually this is being done on a city level. And the privacy advocates are saying that's wrong. You shouldn't be able to monitor us like that. Well, you're in public. You shouldn't. What's the constitutional argument for that? It has been used to fight crime. And I think the little bit of gray area here is going to come from the fact that it has been misused so much already in just its infancy of being deployed in the public sector. And so while I can see both arguments, I don't think I have this one figured out. So here's a good rundown of what it sounds like for the conversation around flock cameras here in Texas. This is Natalie Haddad with our news partner WFAA just this morning, or 2 days ago, I'm sorry.
Good morning. Flock cameras are at the center of growing privacy concerns here in North Texas, and they are typically used as license plate readers, but sometimes they go beyond tracking cars, and certainly people here in North Texas are at odds with these cameras. We're going to start in Hood County. Constable John Shirley posted pictures of himself covering flock cameras in his area with large bags. He wrote, "They've been completely unplugged and covered," and told the company that owns the cameras, quote, "Come get your garbage out of my county." Over in Anna, concern is growing after video taken at Slater Creek Park went viral, showing a flock camera facing a splash pad where young children play. We reached out to the Anna City Council, and they tell us, quote, "The Anna Police Department has cameras installed at Slater Creek Park to enhance public safety, support criminal investigations, deter vandalism, and other criminal activity." They go on to say they are solely used to record video. License plate readers, Freeform, Nova, and other flock AI products are not used at this location. And City Council members are scheduled to talk about flock cameras at their next meeting next week. Meanwhile, here in Dallas, we recently spoke with Police Chief Daniel Como about the growing privacy concerns when it comes to flock cameras, and here's what he had to say.
I understand the concern, but these cameras are not being used to violate anybody's rights. These cameras are being used to keep everyone safe.
Dallas police tell us 670 flock cameras are in the city of Dallas.
That sounds like a lot, but I mean, we are a city of over 1 million people. Here's where I get concerned, because you may think, well, James, you sound like you're in favor of flock cameras. Here, let me go ahead and do the greatest argument against flock cameras, how much they've already been misused. Well, used and misused.
Police searched for data from flock license plate cameras like this one more than 63,000 times last year. And some of those searches accessed more than 100,000 devices far beyond city limits. That's according to data I just got from the Dallas Police Department. It also shows that one officer searched more than 7,000 times for license plates. The department says only some officers are authorized to use the program, so he may be searching on behalf of others. The data we got also logs generally why officers are looking at these flock camera data. It ranges from investigative leads to suspect vehicle, but it doesn't give descriptions beyond those general terms. The Dallas police chief says he believes these cameras are critical to public safety. He gives an example where he says that that they were used to catch someone who is now accused of murdering 2 different people in different instances. Someone who the police chief says he believes would have been a serial killer if it weren't for these flock cameras to catch him. The department also says it has policies in place to stop misuse of this technology. The chief says he can't recall any officers disciplined for use of this technology.
Now, you've heard stories in other cities about how cops were using this to track their ex-girlfriend or catch their wife cheating, or the possibility of misuse is something that's going to be there with any technology that you turn over to a government agency, but that doesn't make it necessarily right or wrong. There is a legit law enforcement benefit to having these things. And the surveillance concerns, for me, the only reason they really fall flat is because you're in public. And there's been crime cameras for years. They just haven't been able to use AI to start logging this stuff. Also, how is this any different than what you see on the tollway? You can pretty much guarantee your license plate is getting measured and logged anytime you get on any of these toll roads that have the toll readers. So I think there is a little bit of gray area with this new technology. Where do we redraw the line between privacy and being in public? And the flock cameras are forcing this conversation, and they already exist, so we need to have it. Is it just a violation of your rights if there's AI attached to these surveillance cameras? You know, like the people were wondering, why would Allen have a police camera trained on a kid's splash pad? Well, be a good way to catch child predators, wouldn't it? So I don't know. Let's dig around in this gray area. You'll hear from some of your neighbors next. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Because after flock cameras, now we got to talk about cameras in classrooms because they're doing that in Fort Worth. You'll hear about both coming up on the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey, fellow Texans, right now when it's 11,000 degrees outside, the people who got Rhino Shield are really feeling the benefits right now. James Parker here for Rhino Shield. Because listen, you could be saving money. You could lower your energy cost during a terrible week like this with Rhino Shield. It's 8 to 10 times thicker than paint, but don't worry, it won't change the surface texture. It still looks great, keeps the wood grain or the stucco or the adobe, whatever you have under it. But it blocks 90% of UV sun rays, so there is a big benefit as well. A 6.9 R factor on your insulation for your house. So it would keep your house cooler. It would keep your house drier, because humidity is also an issue. And right now, this is when it would be expanding with the extreme heat of your house and not cracking, flaking, or peeling. Paint would be letting you down right now. If you just stuck with paint on your house, you wouldn't be saving money on your energy costs. This is when it'd be peeling off at the corners, and it wouldn't be blocking UV sun rays. This is when Rhino Shield performs the best, the hottest heat Texas has to offer. So why cheat yourself? Look, when it's time to get your home fixed up, don't paint your house. You coat your home. Go to rhinoshield.dfw.com.
Never paint your house again.
To flock or not to flock? This is the question. I'm James Parker. It's the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. And children, and I mean mostly men 25 to 64, go ahead and get all your jokes out. I'm just getting messages on Facebook. Oh, good. I have some intelligent response on this very worthy constitutional debate. And then it says, go flock yourself. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the intellectual input here. We're going to start with Randy and Rockwall. Your thoughts on flock camera controversies in Texas?
Hey, I think I have to get my head checked because I agree with you so much anymore that I think that I've gone crazy. 3-4 months. I don't think I've disagreed with you on anything.
You must be a crazy guy.
I must be. Now, flock cameras 100% support them. You're right. In public, no assumption of a right of privacy. All it is better tracking. This saves the police money. It makes the police more efficient. Yes, I understand the whole abuse of powers, but that's why we have courts. We sue that police officer. We sue their department if they violate the rules, and the department will make rules to keep that from happening. That's how the game is played.
Well, I don't think it'll prevent the abuse. I think we can minimize the abuse, and that's kind of good enough for me. Because what I've noticed here, Randy, were you listening to the show I did a couple months ago where they were doing there was a police chase in Los Angeles, and they called off the police after a couple minutes, and they just followed him around with the flock cameras until, like, he even stopped and got gas and refueled and kept going. And they just waited till he was done, and then they went and picked him up. And I was thinking at first I was making fun of him. I'm like, look at these sissies. They don't even do a good car chase anymore. They're just letting them get away with it. No, they don't need to. They don't need to endanger anybody's life. They don't need to do a pit maneuver in the middle of the freeway. They don't have to have the helicopter up there burning $800 worth of gas. So, I mean, I kind of liked it. And look, I'm a privacy rights guy here, but I don't know. I think flock cameras are a net positive.
Infinitely safer, absolutely net positive.
All right. Thank you very much. That's Randy and Rockwall. You want to stick with the Randys? Let's do Randy and Frisco. Hey, Randy and Frisco, you're next up on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
Hey, I'd say get the flock out of here, but, you know, as a 1A, 2A, 4A, 5A guy, I got to be consistent and be like, well, you know, my whole thing is because of the opportunity for abuse, and if you FOIA, like your license plate number against the system, they won't give you all of the information, supposedly. So what I would say is that it wasn't until just recently that they added these security features, but you have to have a CAD number or a case number to actually do a query, period. Like they have to put something in the system where there's a requirement of a certain number of characters and numbers that have to be in there entered before a police officer can query it, because there has to be a
okay, that kind of helps, but how would that work for the Los Angeles police chase that I just mentioned? They already opened a case just based on probable cause or suspicion, and if that's all it takes, then that's not much of a safeguard. Well, I have probable cause that this woman that I was dating was speeding. Yeah, that's the ticket. Now I've got to follow her around.
Well, but whenever you do a FOIA, then you have that FOIA, that CAD number, and that CAD number would pull up that.
Right, but no. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to get in more calls. So that wouldn't be a FOIA that we saw in Los Angeles. That was real time in action, not the next day. Let's go get a judge or go take this to a bench and get them to sign off on looking up the flock cameras. Apparently, they were able to do that in real time.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they did in real time, but somebody could have, immediately, like you were saying, immediately opened up a case. Immediately opened up.
Right, and so that's what happened I think it was in Georgia, where the guy followed his girlfriend, like 7,000 different searches on his girlfriend's car, trying to catch her cheating, or I think they were already broken up. And so he was just putting in there for just light causes. Well, I'm investigating a crime. And so, I mean, that the safeguards, I think, are falling flat right now, but I would rather work on the safeguards and get them up to snuff than get rid of flocks altogether. And thank you very much, Randy and Frisco. Because, I mean, if you try and make the case against it, like if you wanted to be super libertarian about this, then I would say, if flock cameras work so good, can we do a private sector alternative? Can we have just some network where we can string into anyone's Ring doorbell camera or the surveillance camera they have on the parking lot of their gas station? And it feels like maybe if we just went that route, we could sort of string together the same network of cameras to catch criminals in real time without coming up with a government-dependent system. But that's me just trying to argue against myself. Brian in Dallas, you're on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP.
James, I'm not sure I agree with the flock camera system just because of the AI portion of it. I'm okay with the cameras. But my point I wanted to bring up is that the toll tags. We all have toll tags in Dallas, and the toll tags are tracking us all over the city, just not on the tollways. They've got antennas up that are tracking those toll tags just to be able to track traffic. TxDOT uses them.
Yeah, because we all have like a little chip in our toll tags, don't we?
Right.
Is that what's going on with that?
That's tracking us forever.
Because they used to have the card that you would Velcro to your window. Remember when they had the big plastic clunky ones, and then it turned into a sticker? And I assume there's still a chip in there. They're just not that obvious about it.
Chip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good information to
The
have.
highway we're on. Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. That's Brian in Dallas making a good point. John in Hurst, you're on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP.
God bless you, Mr. Parker, and
Thank
your
you.
staff. There is no, I got 2 points. Number one, there is no expectation of privacy. You're in public. Number two, there needs to be checks and balances for some people that are using nefarious ways of taking that data. And really, number three, and I'd hate to have that stuff get hacked. Lord knows what could happen with, some fruitcake out there, getting all that data and, selling it or something like that.
Well, what is the worst case
no
scenario in it getting hacked? What is...
people selling your information. Where do you live? Look, we know this person lives over in off a Legacy in Frisco.
Yeah,
And
can't
they
that
live
already
in
all be tracked on your
1011.
phone? And I guess that's just another opportunity
they
for
do
your
that.
information. All right, no, that's more to think about, John. I'm just kind of out of time. All right, I get it, John and Hurst. 800-288-9227. We'll continue debating flock cameras in Texas next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Yeah, we're debating flock cameras. Where does your privacy begin? Where's the new boundary here? I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. And it's been a debate here in Texas. We've actually had some counties fight against them, reverse course, take them down. There's been instances of vigilante vandalism against flock cameras in Texas. And some people are just kind of weighing the pros and cons here. Is it worth the government surveilling you at all times when you're in public, and not just having cameras out, having AI attached to it that can recognize your face, that can read your license plate, and that can log it to make it more easily searched in the future? Of course, this is going to be misused. Can we keep it to a minimum? Is the crime fighting effectiveness a good trade-off for surveillance? Chris and Keller, you're on News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP.
Yeah, I mean, I get your question about, hey, there's no privacy in public and all that, but the UK's doing this, and it hasn't done much for them. I really don't think the trade-off of crime stopping is worth the surveillance. And if shot, the shot things that can hear the gunshots and isolate it.
Shot spotter.
Controversial. Why is this even a conversation?
Yeah, well, I don't think Shot Spotter was controversial. Shot Spotter was only controversial because not because it was harming anybody, but it was saving people. It just happened to be in the communities that made the narrative look stupid.
Well, exactly. I mean, do we really want to be the UK? Have you seen V for Vendetta? I mean, we're watching this. All these old movies, they're just playing out in real time now.
So you're okay with surveillance cameras, just not the AI attached to them? Is that what I got?
I'm not okay with trading the privacy. I realize we don't have a right to privacy in public.
So but you're not trading privacy.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have the RFID chips that always know where your cars are. It's one thing for the cell phones, and they're tracking your phone through all the towers. But, I mean, this is not just passive. It's completely overt out there. I think it's just a step too far. And where does it end? Minority Report?
Well, when we get there, Minority Report would be something completely different. That's preemptively arresting someone before they commit the crime. So no, this isn't that. We've had crime cameras, and we've had tollway cameras, and we've had similar technology to this for years, and it's been kind of litigated. That was good that you brought up the Shot Spotter. But I think the question comes with this new AI. Now it's just a more efficient way of doing something we've been doing for 20 years. So how does that make it unconstitutional?
I'm not sure that it does, but maybe it should.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'd like, Chris. I would like to see what some big cities do if they adopt this wholly. I would like for there also to be some other huge cities, like maybe Dallas does the flock cameras and Fort Worth doesn't. And let's see if there really is a big enough difference in the crime fighting abilities before we come to a final decision.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. We got to test out the technology.
But that means some people have to listen to you, Chris. Some people have to listen to you and take down the flock cameras and not do them all. So we have a variable and a control group to compare. So I don't know. I might end up being on your side at the end of all this. I'm just not quite there yet. I just haven't seen really the violations to me that overthrow the 6,000 arrests that were assisted by the flock cameras in Dallas last year. Or was it 600? I don't know. I just played the report last segment. You think I'd remember? Bob and Terrell, you're on News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP.
Hi, James. I agree with the last guy. I think government already has a lot of power. I think it gives them even more, and it's going to be abused somewhat. And I don't think they need to know everywhere I go all the time. It's not their business. No.
All right. Well, there's nothing to push back on that. I can't tell you you're wrong if you just say you don't feel like they should know where you're at all times.
Yeah, and I don't think it's good for society to be surveilled all the time. I think people need to have a little room to make mistakes.
Well, maybe that little room is something that's a selling point. if you are, your suburb or whatever you live, maybe that'd be a selling point. We don't have flock cameras here. So the people who don't mind being surveilled by flock cameras, they're like, I understand I'm being watched by the government, but that's a good enough trade-off because we have fewer muggings here. I don't have to worry about people breaking into my car. I don't have to worry about people breaking into my house when I'm out of town. I would just I would just like to see the comparison. And if you want to live in the flock-free city, you go live in the flock-free city. If you want to go live in the city that's totally flocked up, then you can go live there. And so I don't really want to put my foot down either way because I really don't feel like we have enough information on this for me to make like a final decision. Because if it came back and cities that implemented flock cameras saw a drastic reduction in crime, then it'd be hard to argue against something like that's a good trade-off for them knowing when I'm on my way to I don't know, Home Depot or whatever. But last year we had the lowest amount of homicides ever. This year we're already 17% below that number. Could flock cameras be playing a part in that? Coming up next on the James Show. Well, I got some more people that are going to talk about flock cameras. But I saw a video. The new Black Panther Party showed up at the McKinney hearing for the Karmelo Anthony trial. I'm going to play you a delicious piece of audio coming up next on the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. All right, I'm going to squeeze in one more call on flock cameras, and then you've got to hear this fun audio from the new Black Panther Party showing up in McKinney at the Karmelo Anthony hearing this week. This is Joe in Grapevine. You're on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey, Joe.
Hey, buddy. Honor and privilege, and I mean that as always. Great job you always do, buddy. Even though we don't agree on everything, I still love you, man. James, what I'm thinking on this whole thing of being former military, Marine, and privy to information that I held for many, many years and only came out just a few years ago. I won't go into it. I have brought it up before. It's irrelevant. But what I think is a possibility because of the border situation, the mass invasion that we went through, there was a lot of video taken of people coming through. A lot of people we do not know. I know there were hundreds, and why it was done, James, I don't know, were allowed into this country, and as well as criminals. And there were other countries releasing them and told them, you're released, do not come back, that were in prison for murder, for rape, things like that. And, of course, when they came here, they realized they could be repeat offenders because the Democratic blue states were releasing them or not prosecuting them. James, this could be a national security issue because there are literally, with Iran, the resentment that some Afghans may have that the way we pulled out and left them, they were friends, they were people that helped us, they were in the green area.
And so how do flock cameras roll into this concern?
Well, they pretty much, I'm sure, they know that on social sites, on the internet, on phones, you name it, they know, and I'm sure that they're getting smart to that, just as Iran has gone to hard lines. They don't use cell phones. They don't use a lot of things because you can triangulate. But I believe that they are looking for people that could be connected to them and follow up on them, which could locate these people because, James, we have no idea where these people are and what they're doing. Just like today was announced the attack that they thought they were getting explosives and it was going to go through this woman up in New York, that it was radicalized. James, there is so much that I'm afraid that is going on. They're not telling us not to panic the public. Maybe they will come out and tell us, but just think about it. They can if they get someone and facial recognition, they will be able to determine whether they're legal or illegal.
Okay. So, Joe, and again, generally speaking, I think I'm more in favor of flock cameras than I am against it, but I do recognize there's a gray area. Here's my concern with what you just said, though, is the fact that we could use these things to keep us safe from terrorists. That was how the Patriot Act was sold to us. And so we gave up a little bit of surveillance power to the government so they could track you, at least the metadata in your emails, and maybe check out your phone calls if you are connected to an outside person with probable cause and whatnot. It was sold to us as fighting terrorists and keeping you safe. Now, more than 90% of the FISA requests are fighting drugs. They're trying to catch drug dealers and drug users and drug traffickers and pushers and cartel members and things like that. So the things that are sold to us by keeping us safe from terrorists have already been proven in the last couple of decades to immediately be turned around and used against us for just standard law enforcement purposes.
I agree. And I think also they're going to be they already have waged a war, and they're going to be dealing with the cartels. I believe that the next target is going to be top cartel drug dealers.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Well,
and then not to mention, trying to find out. I think it's more because of the terrorist-related situation and the threats that we already have. If you look back, James, there's a lot of threats that don't come out, and they're secret.
Yeah.
They eventually come out. So good job, buddy, on what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just love you so much.
Thanks, Joe. And if you see them actually catch a terrorist with the flock camera, send that to me immediately, and I'll pass that along on the show, because I think that would change a lot of people's mind, including it would, give me it would assuage my concerns a little bit. Thank you. That's Joe in Grapevine. Now I got to pass this along to you. The new Black Panther Party was up in McKinney yesterday protesting outside of the hearing for Karmelo Anthony. He just got a new judge. The old one had to recuse himself, and they just want to share this message. Now, You can't see the video, but there are 4 brothers who look like they're my age or older, which I'm almost 50, so not real intimidating. One of them looks like he's in kind of shape. The other ones don't. But there's a lady that's front and center, and she's not going to make the Olympics anytime soon. I don't want to. I'm not saying. Look, she's pulling up her pants like Chris Farley in the Van Down by the River sketch. That's kind of like her build, except she has 2 of the biggest, boobs probably possible for a woman her size. And when I say they go down to her belt, I'm not exaggerating. You cannot see her belt buckle. So she looks like a cartoon character, but she has a message for you. She's serious, y'all. Listen up, you white devils.
The new Black Panther Party. And we're going to get their view on today's recusal of the judge.
Oh, Black Power, yeah. Well, it's about goddamn time. All power to the people. That's the first step. Now we need for Karmelo to be released. All of the racist acts that took place under Judge Roach, from them not letting people come into the courthouse when it's supposed to be a public hearing, from them not giving the jury instructions on self-defense, so Karmelo would have never got a murder case in the first place. He would have had the jury would have had the option of manslaughter, from the racism.
That's all we got. Didn't we? Wasn't she there at the trial too? I think I got a soundbite of her when the case was going on back in June. Was that her? Or no? I think that was somebody else. That was somebody. Sorry about that. Just mistaken identity. Yeah. The funny part is you go to a soundbite like that, and under the comment section, just a bunch of jokes calling her the snack panther, or she's not fighting white supremacy. She's fighting diabetes. They are so mean. Some guy said she looks like a Glad hefty bag full of chili. And I thought that was just way out of bounds. That is so mean. Gene in Temple, you're on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. Go, Gene.
Well, we're talking about the flock cameras and such, and what is done with the information once they get it. When you have district attorneys saying we're not going to prosecute anything less than $750, I've turned in theft and just been ignored. So it's all good to have the information, but we need to start talking also about our law enforcement and the folks behind it prosecuting these wrongdoers. If there's no penalty, then... Wait,
Gene, where we have one of those jurisdictions that won't prosecute a crime if it's under some certain limit? You said 750. Where was this at?
That was in Dallas County.
God, that's dumb. I didn't know we did that.
Yes. The DA said we're not going to prosecute under $750,000. So what about the poor store clerks or store owners? They got to suck it up.
You know what? You found a chink in my armor there, Gene and Temple. Yeah. How about no flock cameras unless you're actually going to prosecute crimes with it? If you're going to let them get away with it, then you don't get the surveillance. If the excuse is for public safety, then I better see all the public safety possible out of these things. Thank you, Gene and Temple. I did not know that, and that does change my opinion. All right, that's going to about do it for my time today. Thank you very much for hanging out. Coming up next, the great one, Mark Levin, is going to take over. This Labor Day, you can win $1,000 from our holiday weekend contest. Go to WBAP.com, sponsored locally by Benjamin Franklin Plumbing. So go to WBAP.com. You can just click through to the little rotator banner at the top of the page, and hopefully one of you wins $1,000. I'd rather it go to a James Show listener than, I don't know, someone listens to Matt Locke. Just having fun. I'm James Parker. This has been The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.